Welcome to Malpractice Podcast.
Hello, are you ready to get started?
Yes, I'm ready to get started.
So from the top, we want to acknowledge something that happened this past week in our home state of Texas.
As I'm sure the world knows, right, there's a massacre in Uvalde, Texas. It was like an act of terrorism, essentially,
Right.
and a mass shooting in a school. It's like terrible, tragic, heartbreaking, and still continues to be like the most unimaginable thing. And yet, like, is a reality for so many families right now that have to make arrangements to lay their loved ones to rest. And so many of these victims are children. So it makes it, for some reason, harder, right, to talk about. But we really wanted to acknowledge that this is happening and give space to that in the way that we can. And hopefully, you know, if you're somebody who is in Texas, I think it's just hit a little bit close to home for Texans right now. And I think it's just been it's been hard for everyone I've talked to and seen. People are, even if, you know, whatever side of whatever political spectrum, this was like a really difficult situation to process, even on the outside of it. So I cannot imagine being directly connected to any of these families who are suffering like this. So we just wanted to speak about it. Something Michelle and I talked about, I'm sure Sydney felt this way too, is every time something like this happens, like an act of violence with guns or with like a mass shooting or something like that, we see this like media storm, and then like we move on into the next kind of storm as a culture and as a community.
Yeah.
And that has been really striking to Michelle this time. So she's like committed to bringing this up until there's something tangibly done in response and reaction for the survivors of this and for the victims and their families. So much so like that I've like signed up and joined Moms Demand Action, not a mom demanding action. we'll like demand action. I'm gonna volunteer. Like I think that's something that everyone can do. I think a lot of people want to know what they can do. Of course, there are places where you can donate. We have linked them in the show notes that you can go click and donate to support the school district, to support the families. But there's also ways to actively contribute that's not monetary. If you're someone who's like, I don't have money right now, join an organization, even if it's to sign up for an email list, right? Then you get the access to events and you can go and support. That is a lot. And I think a lot from what I'm hearing from families, they just want something to be done. And to honor the victims, that's what I've committed to do, is to joining organizations and demanding that something is done until something is done.
And I think when an event like this happens, it makes you reflect and it makes you reevaluate. It's, you know, it's senseless, and it's one of the most tragic things I think I've ever seen. For me, having to see the words in print, most deadly school shooting, it made me reevaluate a lot. So I hope that it's inspiring other people to support things that you want to see changed.
Yeah.
And to hold the people you care about a little closer.
Yeah, absolutely. But I want to encourage listeners who feel another way that you can maybe move the needle a little bit is to engage in difficult conversations with their families and friends who have differing opinions than you. And I think that is really hard to do. Especially about this topic.
And I also want to encourage those conversations to be meaningful. Like, don't just shout at someone who feels different from you, because that, I feel like, is what we've been doing forever.
Yeah.
One of the things I can't recommend enough is this senator named Chris Murphy. If you haven't seen his speech on the Senate floor regardless of your political opinions, I feel like it's a great one to watch. And I also think that we're reaching a critical mass, and I'm not trying to pretend like I know all the answers, but it feels like something has to change.
Yeah. And I think what has been helpful for me in my experience of having difficult conversations, like when I worked in politics, was finding the thing that we both agree on.
Yeah.
So what can we agree on that would take a step to move forward? Like, find this space where you do agree. Just make it about the facts and be like, this was a tragedy. How could we solve this tragedy? Let's go through and find where we do agree. And that's where the action really is.
Yeah. We all agree that Sandy Hook was about 10 years ago, and that after Sandy Hook, everyone said this can never happen again. This horrible, just terrifying and heartbreaking tragedy can never, ever, ever happen again. And it has happened so many times since then.
Yeah.
And nothing is being done about it. So the place, I think, that we can all agree, so regardless of your political leaning, I think we all recognize that something has to be different moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope so.
I feel like lots of people, including myself, just with this reached a breaking point where it was like, just fucking enough is enough.
Yeah.
So to honor the 21 victims of the UVALDE school shooting, we are going to read their first names.
McKenna, Layla, Miranda, Nevea, Jose Manuel, Xavier, Tess Marie, Rogelio, Ellie, Eliana, Annabelle, Jackie, Uzziah, Jace, Mate, Jalea, Irma, Eva, Amory, Lexi, Alethea.
So let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. Okay, so we're back, and this week we're going to cover Rasputin and the fall of the Romanov dynasty. And let me just say off the top, this story has everything. Everything that I like is in this story. I love a historical case. I love a historical murder case. It has a monarchy takedown, which
I love too. Yeah.
I kind of love to see. And it has the best of all medical true crime, which is what we're here for. Oh, by the way, I'm Sydney.
I'm Jess. I'm pretty sure we said our names at some point.
Yeah, I don't think we did. But this is Malpractice Podcast, and we're here.
Yeah.
I'm super excited to get into this. I actually know a weird amount about Rasputin because of Miss Christian's pre-AP world history.
If you don't know, Sydney and I went to the same school. Sydney and I are the same person.
Correct.
And we went to the same school. We had this class. I think we had this class together, actually.
I think so, too.
Because I remember you doing this, and when we started this episode, I was like, why is this familiar? Because, of course, I forget everything immediately that's not of use to me in the next 30 minutes. Because I did Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King Jr., I did Martin Luther.
OG Martin Luther. Yeah.
I know about that because my parents are Lutheran and I had to go through confirmation. So I literally did all of the research from memory.
That's work harder or work smarter, not harder. That's what you did.
Oh, I literally was like,
yeah. So I did Rasputin. And because I've always been super cool, that was double finger guns. If you can't see it, but you could hear it. I've always been super cool and really concerned about what other people think. So I dressed up as Rasputin.
I know for a fact we were in the same class because once you just said that, I remember you.
I know.
I remember you.
I know you do. I wore a long black wig and a mustache and beard combo. Yeah. I glued on long black fingernails.
I literally have no words.
And I wore a cloak. and I creeped around the classroom and gave my presentation as Rasputin, like all teenage girls do.
Yeah, you were a freak. Same.
So clearly a weirdo.
So Gregory, I'm not going to say his middle name because I'll mess it up. Rasputin.
Can I do it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yefimovich.
Okay.
That was good, wasn't it?
That's him. How I talk about him is old Greg or Raspy. So that's what I say. That's what I wrote.
You almost made me spit out my tea.
We actually touched on him a little bit when Sydney covered the Christmas disease, like one Christmas time. But today we're going to go like all in.
Yeah.
Full details on Raspy because he was wild with the WH. He was essentially like a peasant, a mystic, a fake healer, hypnotist. Is that how you say it?
Hypnotist?
Hypnotist.
Yep.
Hypnosis. Obviously, a bitch has never been hypnotized. And just like really gross. Am I missing anything of that list?
Apparently he was also stinky and maybe had a giant wiener.
That's disgusting.
Yeah, I know. He remains one of the most controversial figures in Russian history, which is like a serious accomplishment, it feels.
Yeah.
It is said about him he was either admired or hated, and there was no in-between, which, bitch, same. However...
That you hate him or admire him, or that you are either admired or hated?
That one, the second one.
Okay.
Okay.
Whatever, everybody loves you.
Whatever. However, it is agreed, if you hated him or not, that he was a great healer, and usually it is said through therapeutic hypnosis, which no one really knows how that works. To me, it sounds like bullshit, but apparently it worked for this family in this specific case. So let's get into it.
So Raspy was born January 22nd, I will call him Raspy forever, of 1869 in Russia.
Siberia.
Got it.
He's from a town in Siberia. I'm not going to try to say that word.
Look, I'm not trying to offend any Russian people or listeners.
Y'all's words are hard, period.
Yeah, I'm doing my best. I have a lot of trouble with many words, so I don't know if it's just Russian words at this point in my life. He was one of 7 children. None of his brothers or sisters actually reached adulthood. He was the only child from his parents to actually survive.
Creepy.
I looked up his zodiac sign because I am a freak. And January 22nd zodiac people are like on the Capricorn Aquarius cusp. This is called the cusp of mystery, which I was like, aw, damn, it is pretty. Feels pretty accurate so far. Yeah.
Mysterious as fuck.
They are shy but supportive, reassuring and caring. They have a strong sense of independence. I mean, that he did, because once we get into him, he did not care, well, not one single word for anybody else's opinion.
Correct.
I think this kind of tracks. He did actually attend school, but he remained illiterate, so Avi paying really good attention. Not a good student, and earned himself a nickname, and it was the debauched one.
Yeah.
So far, like, not so good for him.
Yeah. Also, if people thought he was debauched as a child, they ain't seen nothing yet, because as an adult, he is wild as fuck. He was said as a young person to not be in great health himself, so one of his goals in life became to essentially heal and strengthen himself. At the age of 18, he goes to a monastery where he's introduced to a sect called the Callisti.
I think so.
Yeah, it looks right. And one of the beliefs of the Callisti was that it was only by committing sins and repenting could someone get close to God, which feels like a cop-out to me, but what do I know? Like, God says these things are wrong, so you have to do them to first get...
No, it is fucking weird. This entire thing, if you believe this, I am confusion.
Same. So he took those beliefs and pretty much shifted them to his benefit, which feels like is what they're kind of doing here. Well, could be wrong.
But he took it to another level, right?
Correct. He said that there was this doctrine where one person would get nearest to God when feeling holy passionlessness. And he said that the best way to get there was through sexual exhaustion that came from extensive sexual escapades.
Yeah,
So
I know you want me to react here, but I literally have no words. I have no words. He's gross.
I have a lot of questions. I don't think that's how it works, but okay.
I'm like pretty sure that's not how it works. Just like...
And the monks that he was training with basically said the same thing. They were like, bro, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
Goodbye. And that's what he did. So he returned to his home and he got married to this woman whose name is Praskovia Fyodornova Dubrovina.
I know you're not asking me with those question marks at the end of each of those.
The question marks are just for
The general public, yeah.
I feel like if I throw a question mark in there, then no one can get mad at me because I'm telling you off the top that I don't know the answer.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay. So, he was 19 when they got married. They have 4 children together. Let's all take a wild guess if that marriage worked out well.
Drum roll, please.
The answer is no.
It did not. I'm just guessing.
Did not.
It didn't.
Yeah. No, it didn't.
Yeah. He left his family and his home, wandered to Mount Athos, Greece, and Jerusalem. He traveled living off donations from peasants he met along the way, which, okay, he claimed to be like a holy man or a starets, and also claimed to be able to heal the sick and even predict the future. I think like in general, he has too many lies.
Yeah.
Like, I think if he just picked one lie
and stuck with it.
And stuck with it wholeheartedly, the one lie, I think he wouldn't have met with the fate that he met.
Yeah, I feel like you can't. Well, this is just a lesson for lying. Don't go so far in.
Yeah.
You have to like focus on one kind of believable thing.
Yeah. Just one thing.
This guy is like, oh yeah, and I can see the future.
Yeah.
Why? No one believes you.
No.
Or likes you.
No. Well, yeah. Well, so he's wandering around like a loon and finds himself in St. Petersburg in 1903.
Mm-hmm.
Now, please remember throughout this, like, I don't think we touch on his family again. He, like, leaves his family.
Correct. He deuces out straight away. I'd also like to point out that he's living off of donations from peasants, which peasants are poor people. They're like, bitch, I do not have money to feed you. Why are they giving him donations?
So he's super manipulative.
Yes. That speaks to me to how good he was at getting people, like getting on the inside and getting people to like him. Like poor people are giving him money.
Yeah, agreed.
Period.
So he's there, St. Petersburg. He stumbles into this religious academy and is welcomed by Theophan, who is the chief inspector there. I don't know what the fuck a chief inspector of a religious academy does, but like, maybe I want to do it.
He's probably just like measuring hemlines. He's like, I saw an ankle. Let me get my ruler out, measure a hemline. Your hem's too short. You're out of the religious academy. Right?
Yeah, I don't want to. Never mind.
Change
your mind. It sounds like a cool job, though.
Correct.
This was like the opportune time for him to come in contact with this specific community because wealthy court members were being entertained by mysticism and the occult. And that's Raspi's love language. He is like, I am home.
Yes.
And not my actual home where my children are. I am home where I belong.
No, I'm never going back to that home. Forget those kids.
Oh, yeah, no.
Fuck those kids.
So he is said to have like super engaging eyes and he is able to heal people and people like fell in love with him. And eventually he gets introduced to the royal family, but that's not what happens yet.
I just want to, the part where you said engaging eyes, it makes it sound like this man is handsome. And I just want to be clear. People say his eyes are engaging because they're like psychopath eyes.
Oh, yeah. They're like mesmerizing you like in a trance.
Correct.
Vibes.
He, in my opinion, born in a different era, 100% could have been like a cult leader or...
I would argue he might have been here.
He kind of was, right?
Right.
Or like today's age, he could have like a profitable startup company.
He's an MLM person.
Definitely, because people are scared of him. They'd buy his shit. What are you selling? Tupperware? Sold. Or maybe like a dictator.
Yeah.
One of those things. He was destined for something that is manipulating people, and that's what he does.
So he finds himself in his new home, remember? And he's like, this is my shit. My love language
is trickery.
I'm home. So what is going on with Russia? So let's set the scene here because while old Greg Raspi is coming up and getting ready to run wild, Russian history has some very interesting things happening at the same time, which creates the space for him to kind of like weasel in.
100%. Netflix has this series. Have you seen this? It's called The Last Tsars.
No, but I'm going to go watch it immediately.
I am absolutely obsessed with it. You have to watch it. It's amazing. It's like a dramatic documentary series that captures what's going on in this story so perfect. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there, but it feels really perfect.
Feels right.
The Imperial House of Romanov starts in 1613. It's the second dynasty to ever rule over Russia. So for 5 generations, they rule Russia with absolute power. and they literally felt like they are ordained by God to be on the throne.
Yeah. That's how monarchs are. I can't stand that.
Right. But it kind of comes with this attitude of like, who are you to tell me that I shouldn't be here? God literally told me that I earned this job. Okay.
Yeah. Meanwhile, God has not spoken to you in years.
Correct. New phone, who dis, said God.
Exactly.
So they rule with an iron fist, and at this point, it's an autocracy where basically whatever the czar says goes. So the czar is like the male ruler.
I want to say too, like during this time period, if you are described as ruling with an iron fist, then you're a real dick.
Correct. Because everybody else was...
Because already shit is hard.
Right. And everybody else was being kind of a dick. So if you stand out in how much of a dick you're being...
Trash.
It's impressive.
Yeah. In not the good way.
Right. Also, the Romanov family is building these insane palaces and like public monuments to themselves and having these huge public displays. Like every time a new one gets crowned, they have a coronation ceremony. It's just a lot of excess in a time
it's
when...
extravagant, right?
Right. Very, very extravagant when the average peasant can barely afford to feed their family. So I included a picture of it, but imagine this is the palace where the royal family lives, and you're a Russian peasant, and you live in like a hole in the ground, and your diet is 90% potatoes.
Yeah, you hate them.
You're mad.
Yeah.
Right. You're mad, and also... I feel like it's not that big of a stretch to think like, well, maybe God does think they're special because why do they get all this cool stuff?
If God doesn't think they're special, God fucking hates me. That's what I would think as a peasant. Like,
that's what I
know too. One of two things. They're either they are the sun or God thinks I am a piece of shit.
Like,
that is what I would think.
I can't tell if they're really special or I'm really not special. It's one of those two.
Yeah, I'm 100% not special as a peasant. 100%.
Right. And as a peasant, this is also not like a small group of people. At this point, the Romanovs rule over 125 million people, and they control nearly 1/6 of the entire Earth's landmass. Like, Russia is huge. It's multi-ethnic.
Oh, yeah.
There's a cajillion people there, and they are not acting like that is the case.
Yeah. So... now let's get into the people who make up the Romanov family. Alexander III sits on the throne for about 13 years, during which he rolls back a lot of these liberal reform policies that have been made before him. A collective boo here.
Boo.
Boo. He was like very into Russian Orthodox religion. He was harsh as fuck and promoted like nationalism, anti-Semitism, and general bullshittery.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing against organized religion, but you shouldn't impose like restrictions of your religion onto others for what you believe.
Yeah.
And that's not just me. That's like straight facts. Like that makes you a dick.
100%.
As anyone can imagine, he is not popular. So he might think that God loved him, but everybody else hated his ass. He also knows that there's a revolution brewing, so he's regularly catching and publicly hanging anyone with anti-monarchy sentiments. Big yikes. Also, Handmaid's Tale vibes. And in the middle of this, there's a huge famine and cholera outbreak, which together cause about 375,000 to 500,000 deaths. Essentially, shit is bleak.
No, 100%.
Everyone is unhappy. Except for maybe him and his new palace. I don't know.
Yeah, and everyone is dying.
And we don't love that.
And also, on the anti-Semitism front, it's not just like they were casually like, no, we don't like Jewish people. They were running pogroms against Jewish people that were essentially murder sprees. Like, it was not good for anyone.
Well, I fucking hate him.
So then, in 1894, Alexander III gets sick and dies of kidney disease. Okay, Alexander III feels like a complicated person to me because I think he was very nice to the people inside his circle.
Which is like, okay, that's everyone.
Fair enough.
Like, I think people would say I'm nicer to you than I am to anyone else. And I would say, yeah, duh, but it doesn't mean I'm like going around.
Okay, fair enough. That's the vibe. You're always nicer to people inside your circle, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, not everyone, but he definitely was. So he gets sick. He dies of kidney disease when he's 49 years old.
Good. I hate him.
I I feel like he was...
He's not a good person. We haven't said anything redeeming about him at all, except that he was nice to his family, which, like, okay.
Oh, la-ti-da. You're an anti-Semitic fuckhead.
Yeah,
Great
shiny
for
star
you.
for you for that one fucking thing.
So, for as weird and mean as he was to the Russian peasants and basically everybody else, he seemed to actually really love his son. There's this one story. As he was on his deathbed, Tsar Alexander apparently insisted on meeting his son Nicholas's future wife, Princess Alex, who's from Germany. And for her to come to the palace, he wanted to be put into his full military uniform to give the young couple his blessing. And that event exhausted him completely. He actually ended up dying a few days later, leaving his 26-year-old son, Nicholas II, as the sole ruler of Russia, which I just want to think about myself when I was like 25, 26. If they told me my job was to rule Russia, I'd be like, bitch, I can't even figure out what my hair is doing.
The only thing I'm going to say about this is that if you were like in line for a monarchy, you were trained since you were like 3 years old.
Yeah.
To do it. Now, I'm not saying that you're like, fuck yeah, I got this, but his one job in his life has been to learn what to do.
That's not unfair.
If you were given that job right now, you might be like, bitch, where? But like, he has been
correct,
trained. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. But he also does not want this job.
Yeah.
So as a child, he saw his grandfather murdered in an explosion that was the result of like a very public assassination. And basically his whole entire vibe is like, fuck this. I am not ready for it. He straight up asks his cousin, what is going to happen to me and all of Russia? Like, he knows he's not the right guy for the job, but he's the one that's in line for it, so he has to take it.
Too bad, so sad.
I mean,
God loves
period.
you the most.
Your dad said, and he said it repeatedly. He's like, I'm the one. I think he's trying to get into character, so he's like, yeah, God picked me. What's up? You know what I mean? Like, he's trying to hype himself up to...
Yeah. Meanwhile, God is like, can you feed some people?
God is like, bitch, please. I have a lot on my hands.
Right. It is the 1900s. Like,
people are constantly dying. Yes.
Correct. God is busy.
God's busy. Also, I just want to point out that Nicholas is kind of hot. I'm going to say it.
You don't want to point it out.
He is kind of hot. He looks like... If he had this facial hair now, he would definitely be a hipster, but he has like a little mustache that turns up at the ends.
I don't like a mustache. Yeah, no. I don't like a mustache.
Yeah, I'm very into it.
I do like that he's not his dad, who I obviously can't stand. Never met him. Hate him.
It's a step forward.
Yeah, Nicholas, see, if you're scared of a job, you're probably going to do a better job than the person who thinks they're bomb.com.
Fair enough.
So Nicholas is crowned as the sole ruler of Russia, much to his dismay, and they move the wedding forward so they can roll together with his fiancée / wife, Alex. So a week after his father's funeral, on the 26th of November in 1894...
Which is Eric's birthday.
Oh, cool.
Not 1894.
I was about to say, oh, damn, he's old.
He's a vampire. Keep going.
So happy birthday to Eric, and also... So he's married now to Alex... And it seems like they actually really love each other. He described her as the one person who gave him confidence that he could do the job. He's quoted as saying, I love you, my own darling, as few persons can only love. I love you too deeply and too strongly for me to show it. It is such a sacred feeling. I don't want to let it out in words that seem meek and poor and vain. Well, obviously you show it by buying people palaces and shit.
Which he did. So.
Correct.
I mean... In a cash, grass, or ass scenario, he's bringing all of them.
Sydney, he's not...
I have to cut
Stop
that.
it now. He's not...
I know. I have to cut all of this. Eric's going to be like, are you fucking kidding me? You're in love with this old
He kind of
man?
looks like Eric low-key.
Okay, does he though?
Yes.
I think he kind of does.
He looks like Eric.
And I feel like it's not that bad. If he looks like Eric, then I'm allowed to think he's hot. Anyway.
He looks like Eric for sure. I don't know if Eric's going to agree with the rest of your statement.
I think he's fine with it. So they were in love, like actually in love. They weren't just like set up for marriage because it was political and convenient, which is why everyone got married at this point in time. They were actually really devoted.
That's why I got married. Just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding, Michelle. I love you. You're amazing.
Oh my God. So they were actually super devoted to each other and in love, which is fun.
Yeah, that's fun for them.
What's not fun comes next. They start off their reign as the Tsar and Tsarina by hosting a giant festival to celebrate their own coronation, which throw your own party, I get that. They're serving food, they're serving free beer, they're giving out these souvenir cups to like mark the celebration.
What?
Right.
This is where the souvenir cups came from?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. 100%. So they're doing this in this field outside of Moscow because it was the only place that they could find close enough to Moscow that would hold this many people. But they didn't expect the massive number of people who showed up.
Well, you're giving out free shit.
Right. To poor people.
What did you think was going to happen?
You're giving out free shit to poor people. It's like when you host an event for college students and it says free pizza and beer, you need to order twice as much as you think.
Yeah.
Because
they're coming.
If you tell poor college students that they can have free food and beer, they will be there.
Yeah.
It's
agreed.
the same vibe here. So they were expecting, I think they were expecting like 10 to 20,000. Over 100,000 people come to celebrate in what is basically a giant muddy field.
Mm-hmm.
And people are just trampling on it. It's getting muddier. It's gross, right?
Yeah.
So all these people are there. They're eating and they're drinking heavily. And they're starting to get rowdy, as a crowd will do. So then out of nowhere, this rumor spreads that they are running out of food and alcohol, which kicks off a stampede that results in 1,389 people, peasants, dying, and another 1,300 injuries, because basically people got trampled trying to get to the front of the line to get these commemorative cups and beer. So it was poorly planned, essentially.
Correct.
And so actually, it seems like the Tsar was really broken up about it. He was sad that this happened, and he wanted to stay in his room and pray for the people who had died. But his royal court insisted that he go to this party with like a French consulate. And then the mourning populace who just watched their loved ones die sees him that night chatting and drinking and dancing. They almost immediately start thinking he's a dick. And this is like right after his coronation.
Right.
So it's not great timing.
His dad already has a bad reputation, and they're like, let's see how this one goes. He gives them free beer, and they're like, oh. And then he does this. They're like, you're a dick, too.
Immediately, he's a dick.
That's exactly
Right.
what happened.
It's not good timing, for sure.
Yeah. Even worse was the event that people came to call Bloody Sunday was on January 22nd, 1905, when the working class marched on the palace in St. Petersburg, I can't speak, to protest their working conditions and low wages. And I mean, like, agree, like,
Right.
protest.
Go off.
When all of a sudden, outside of the Winter Palace, government soldiers started, like, shooting at the peaceful protesters. I guess we've been doing this in history the entire fucking time.
Right.
The 10,000 soldiers had been told not to let the protesters reach the palace, and they were feeling kind of like backed into a corner as they shot and killed 96 protesters, injured 300 more. And if you're injured at this time, like,
You're gonna die.
you got like an 80% chance of not making it.
Also, I just want to point out the 96 dead and 300 injured was what that's the number that the government released.
Oh, it was more.
The protesters there said it was up to 4,000 people.
Well, that sounds more.
Right. So you have a government saying 96 and the anti-government people saying 4,000. So the truth is probably somewhere in the middle.
Which is a lot of people.
Which is a lot of people.
96 people is a lot.
5 people is a lot of people.
Agreed.
Like, you killed peaceful protesters.
One person, arguably, is a lot.
They were also entirely peaceful.
Fuck the government. So public outrage from this event was like almost immediate. Duh. So a protest on working conditions and wages results in hundreds or thousands of people dying.
Mm-hmm.
The outrage is going to be like intense. Everyone was already not crazy about Nicholas because, you know, he's perceived to be trash after that one incident.
Yeah.
So shooting unarmed protesters didn't help.
100%. It's not a great look for the ruling class. So while all of this is going on, because these incidents are, you know, several years apart, Nicholas and Alex have been leading a country and generally living their lives. They have 5 kids, largely because the first 4 had been girls. So their names are Olga is the oldest, then Tatiana, Maria, and Anastasia. And everybody's seen the movie Anastasia. Yes, it's that Anastasia. So they basically had all of these girl children because they were trying for a male heir, because this is the early 1900s and girls are not allowed to do things in society.
Yeah.
So when they have this fifth kid, their first son, he is essentially the world to them. And also remember, Nicholas didn't really want to rule Russia. Like, he did not want this job. It is not his vibe. He wants to hang out in his giant castle mansion with his hot wife and their kids, and they just want to have people wait on them and chill. They don't want to deal with the bullshit that comes with running an entire country, which, same.
I hate him for that. It just seems like he's doing a terrible job.
I have a hard time with this because I feel like the show The Last Romanovs made me like him. Like, it made me like him as a person because they portray him as kind of a good dude that's in a really bad situation.
Yeah. I tend to believe that those people are usually garbage.
It's entirely possible. I mean, he did repeatedly say he was anointed by God to be there. Like, he said that, as well as his dad, which he grew up thinking that, so whatever.
Right.
So the birth of their fifth child, Alexei, the first male heir, is what sets the Romanovs family collision course with good old Rasputin in motion. Because in 1907, their fifth and youngest child, Alexei, is 3 years old, and he hurts his leg. Right after that, he becomes extremely ill. Doctors can't figure out why. So Raspi was introduced to the Tsars family by some of their relatives. They're like, this guy is a faith healer. He can help. Sidney Gibbs, who served as the English tutor for the Romanov children, wrote, quote, "The Empress believed in his righteousness, in his spiritual strength, believed that his prayer helps. That was the only way she treated him. Rasputin did not visit the palace as often as it was shouted about. He was called upon when Alexei's illness showed itself. He was understood by me like this, a smart, cunning, kind man." So that's one person's account. Everyone else's is pretty different. But allegedly what happened is Alexei hurt his leg, Rasputin is summoned and sees Alexei. The child recovers the next morning. So Alexandra starts to believe that Rasputin had performed a miracle and essentially concluded that he was critical to Alexei's survival. Like, he is the only one. She's had doctors in and out this whole time. No one could do anything. He was the first one to actually do something.
Mm-hmm.
So after that, he almost instantly became, quote, an indispensable member of the royal entourage. That was a historian said that.
In 1908, he was summoned to the palace during their son's hemophiliac bleeding episode.
Right.
Which we now know that's what it was. But before that, everyone was like, what the fuck is going on? So he was called in. He was able to ease the suffering of the child. Some say he did that by hypnotic powers. Just FYI. The Grand Duchess Olga, the sister of Nicholas II, wrote that there were dark circles around his eyes, the child. His leg was swollen.
I thought you were talking about Rasputin. I'm not going to lie.
Could be. His leg was swollen.
He does kind of have some puffy eye bags. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. His leg was swollen beyond recognition. The doctors were no use. She continues, then the Empress sent a telegram to Raspi in St. Petersburg. He arrives around midnight. By that time, I was already in my apartment, and in the morning, Alex called me to Alexei's room, and I couldn't believe my eyes. The toddler was not only alive, but also healthy. He was sitting on the bed. The fever seemed to have been removed. There was no trace of the tumor in his leg, or like the growth in his leg.
Mm-hmm.
His eyes were clear and bright, and later, I learned from Alex that Raspi didn't even touch the child. He just stood at the foot of the bed and prayed.
Right.
That's what she said. That's her account of it. So it is believed that he probably was not like a healer, but actually just like great at hypnosis. And that was really common among Orthodox priests at the time. And he was often seen performing that to impress like ladies or whatever.
Or whatever.
Whatever he was doing. And at this moment, it was the best thing he could have done for his reputation because everyone was like fawning over him.
Right. I mean, people were super, super excited about him. So what you have is this broke-ass Siberian dude who is claiming to be a holy man and a mystic, and he's telling the Tsarina, which is essentially the queen of Russia, that he's the only one who can treat the disease that is killing her only son, who is also the heir to the throne.
Yeah.
Right. So she's like, I'm all in. Sold. Sounds great.
Since he's good at it.
People also said that Rasputin was strangely magnetic and that he seemed to hypnotize the Tsarina, Alex. And that was a fact that the Russian people were not pleased with. People saw him as a megalomaniac and a sort of puppet master to a weak-willed monarchy that lived in excess while the average Russian peasant starved. The people also, this is just an important note, the people also didn't love Tsarina Alex because of her German heritage. They saw her as an outsider. So you have this outsider who is being controlled by this poor man from Siberia. And in town, like in St. Petersburg, Russian people, if you're from Siberia, you're like a hick, right?
And he's gross.
And he's gross. And he's fucking everyone.
Yeah.
Like, he's having sex with so many people while he's here on the scene. So people are like, ew, what are you doing? Basically, to the Tsar and Tsarina. But traditional medicine had been unable to treat her son with hemophilia, so the Tsarina was more than happy to welcome him, despite all of his personal flaws, into her inner circle after he supposedly stopped the young prince's bleeding with prayer. According to one historian, Mark Farrow, the Tsarina had a, quote, passionate attachment to Rasputin, which, ew.
Yeah. I don't know. That language is weird.
So there's lots of rumors, and we'll get into this later a little bit more, but there's lots of rumors that he and Alex were hooking up, but I don't think that was true.
No, I don't think so either. I read a lot of historical arguments that said that wasn't true.
Yeah. I basically think that she saw him as Alexei's lifeline.
Yeah. I think she thought he was like a god.
And she thought that he was keeping her son alive, so.
Yeah, agreed. So he predicted Alexei's recovery after doctors told his mom there's no hope, that he was definitely going to die. So to this day, no one knows exactly what Rasputin did to treat the prince. But one guess is that he calmed him down, allowed him to rest, and stopped the doctors from seeing him so they couldn't prescribe him aspirin, which was commonly used even then to treat pain. But it can also act as an anti-clotting agent, which would have been making his hemophilia even worse. So that's the logical historian perspective of what possibly happened there.
And honestly, that actually sounds right. For anyone who doesn't know, hemophilia is an inherited genetic disorder that basically stops your body's ability to make blood clots, which is a process that is absolutely necessary to stop bleeding. So, when he fell down and scratched his leg at the beginning of this whole debacle, basically he would have started bleeding and been completely unable to stop, which eventually will drain your body of blood. It's a huge problem. And if they were giving him aspirin, it would be making it worse because it makes your blood thinner and stops your blood from clotting. So eventually Rasputin's weird hold on the royal family began to feed into their rising unpopularity because he was a complete party animal and he was pretty insane. He basically had sex with whoever he wanted all the time and claimed that he was helping, this is a quote, purify people, with his wiener.
No. Disgusting. Mm-mm.
Right. So the Romanov family is defending him also while he's having sex with everyone in the royal court and basically everyone's wife. He's like, bring your wife to me. I'm going to do a religious ceremony. And then the dudes are like, yeah, sounds great. My wife has been depressed forever. And then she comes back and she's like, yeah, he had sex with me. And they're like, what the fuck? He said it was religious. It's not.
Let's be clear. Several people in different groups and different cliques hated this guy. Some of the nobility were so annoyed that this peasant would have so much favor with the imperial family. So Rasputin would create more stories about himself and fuel the fire as well.
Yeah.
He was super proud as a person and started to think of himself as better than everybody else.
Yeah, I think he's a narcissist and maybe a little bit of a psychopath.
100%.
Just a scooch, a dash of psychopath.
Yeah, once he got invited to these beautiful places with these powerful people and they'd listen to him, he wanted to have something to say. So he was known to drink a ton, falling on your face, drunk, and then he would come out, sober up in order to pursue noble women.
Mm-hmm.
So he was like a stand-up guy.
Right. Super cute.
Loved that. In addition to people just like hating him in general, he was also said to be like super gross. Like Avi, he wouldn't know the royal standards of cleanliness and manners, being like a peasant,
Mm-hmm.
relatively impoverished. But people said like he's gross even for the lower class at the time. He used to lick spoons before serving others.
Yeah.
Immediately no.
No.
And apparently had food like in his beard all the time. Like
Ugh.
just like he obviously wasn't clean.
Yeah.
Rarely washed, and often like smelled badly. This may be reason enough to hate him. Like I hate him from this. Like I mean, I'm like, bleh.
Yeah.
The court physician for the imperial family like literally hated Raspi.
Yeah. There were a lot of people that hated him. What doesn't make sense to me is that you look at pictures of him, which exist, and we'll post one. He's gross. He looks gross, and he's just like sleeping with everyone.
I don't know why.
To the ladies of the 1900s, I say raise your standards.
Yeah. Literally just have standards. I think that would be the minimum.
Just start with a standard. Just one.
The outbreak of World War I in 1914. This is like the beginning of the end for Raspi as well as the Romanovs. So after World War I breaks out, Nicholas goes to the front lines to take control of the military in 1915, and it's not going well at all. So eventually, when public opinion of the family was at an all-time low, a powder keg exploded when Raspi boasted to a monk that he had kissed Tsarina Alex. The monk didn't believe him, but then Raspi showed him letters written by Alex and her children. 3 years later, these letters went public and were viewed as evidence that Raspi and Alex were lovers. Again, we don't think that that's necessarily true.
No, I totally don't think it is. But if you read the letters, she tells him that she loves him or like adores him. Like she says very affectionate things that I think if you weren't in the position of a mom trying to keep their child alive, you maybe wouldn't understand.
Yeah.
I don't know if Russian people were super affectionate and flowery with their tone. And she's from a different country, so it's possible that
Culturally, she's just different.
And then on top of that, she thinks that this man is basically Jesus incarnate for keeping her child alive.
Yeah.
What's super interesting also is that because he was the heir to the Russian throne, Alexei's hemophilia was literally like a top secret state secret. That sounds stupid.
Love that.
Top secret government.
No, I love it. Top secret state. I mean, it's like a state secret, and then it's top secret among those secrets.
Correct. Nobody can know that the heir of the throne is like weak, partially because if they found out, the Russian people would think that this was the time to strike.
Right.
Because he was weak. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that while this is happening, you have an increasingly unpopular family that is ruling a country in turmoil. Like people are starving. They have a very sick little boy who they believe can only be treated by someone who is constantly making them more unpopular.
Yeah.
So it's a really fragile situation that keeps getting worse. So while Nicholas is out on the front lines pretending like he's a military dude, which he is not.
Yeah, we know.
Right. I mean, you can tell by his beard. That beard has never seen combat. It is too nicely kept.
Yeah. And the mustache.
And the mustache. Okay, where was I? Beep, boop, bop. Okay.
He leaves his wife.
He leaves his wife to run the entire country, and she is not doing great. Partially because she's really preoccupied with keeping her son alive. And everyone in the Russian population begins to believe that stinky old Rasputin is secretly running the country. Like they see her as a puppet and him as like the puppet master pulling the strings.
Yeah.
Because government officials are constantly being dismissed and appointed at the drop of a hat. Whatever Rasputin's whims are, it seems like she's just going along with it. So she also starts passing even more restrictive policies that many people believe are hurting the Russian populace, while her husband is off fighting a war that is making it harder to get food.
Yeah. From already, it's
Their
hard.
sons are going off to war and they don't want them to. Like they're not invested in this war.
Yeah.
And it's getting worse for the people. Yeah.
So it's like assassination time.
Right.
It's time.
Somebody got to get God.
So Prince Yusupov. Yusupov?
Looks right. Sounds right.
Okay. He lured Raspi to his palace, saying that he would introduce him to his beautiful princess sister, Irina. Oh, I like that name.
It's beautiful.
And he and his friend, the Grand Duke Dmitri, and Deputy Vladimir, they fed him some cyanide-laced cakes and, like, lots of drinks.
Yeah, they got him trashed.
Apparently, he has a stomach of steel because he is said to just, like, keep eating. So he's, like, ate cyanide and he's, like,
Sounds
delicious.
good.
And he's, like, still eating and drinking. And they're, like, looking at him like, bitch, where? Like, how are you alive? And he's like, look at me.
Right.
I'm disgusting. You think poison's going to take me down? No.
He's eating the cakes and he's like, I love almonds.
Literally. So they're annoyed because he's not dead. And then they, like, shot him several times. And, like, still he didn't die right away. So he's, like, poisoned, shot, and he's just, like, not dead yet. So they shoot him again.
I think they shot him 4 times and he still wasn't dead.
So they shoot him again. And then Raspi falls down in the snow outside of the palace. And they ended up drowning him after that just to be sure he was dead.
Mm-hmm.
And he died at the age of 47.
Yeah. Also, I feel like the 4th time you shoot someone and they still don't die after you tried to poison them, I would be like, maybe he is special.
Yep, agreed.
Okay, so Alexei is devastated by Rasputin's death. He is quoted as saying, "There are no more saints now. There was a saint, Gregory, but they murdered him. Now they heal me and they pray, but there is no use. And Gregory, he used to bring me an apple, pat me on the sore spot, and I immediately felt better."
I mean, no, you didn't, but okay.
You know, it's one of those things. It's hard for me to decide if he just felt better because there was someone looking at him and paying attention to him and calming him down. Reducing his stress probably would have been enough to make his hemophilia a little bit better.
Yeah.
So Rasputin is dead. No one can possibly doubt this because they dump his body in a river and it washes up on the shore and the Petrograd police find it. But the family's relationship with their holy man would continue to haunt the Romanovs until they themselves were eventually murdered.
So Raspi is dead. It's for sure. What we're going to do next episode, spoiler alert, is we're going to talk a little bit more about this family and some medical, I don't know as much as Sydney, so I'm going to sound stupid, and some medical sciencey ways in which the story of Anastasia kind of plays into this, along with like the death of the Tsar and his family.
Yeah, so in part 2 of this episode, we're going to cover the death of the Romanov family. We'll cover some really interesting medical science practices that were used on the Romanov family after their passing. We have lots of really cool things to talk about. So thank you for sticking with us through this week, and we will see you next week. If you haven't already, don't forget to leave us a review. It really helps us grow our podcast, and we love to hear what you think.
And don't forget, malpractice makes perfect.